Alright, hey guys, what's going on? It's Neo here. So, it's been a while since I've done a review, but I'm going to be doing this review a little bit differently normally than I would. There's just so much stuff that I have to talk about in this review that I can't even fit it into a Share Factory video, which would just be the easiest way for me to edit this right now. I don't really feel like going through moving all the clips that I've recorded onto my computer using my PS4 and all that stuff. I just don't feel like doing that because this thing's too long for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm essentially just going to, and I guess I can't change it, but I was going to flip the image over. I guess I can just turn my camera around, but here. I wrote out my entire review, which is 2,842 words. It's 5 pages and not double spaced at all. So this is my review for Afro Samurai 2 Revenge of Kuma Volume 1, which was released yesterday by Redacted Studios, which is a smaller indie, sorry, my camera's all in my face, a smaller independent developer, kind of spun off of the old creators of the very first Afro Samurai 2, or very first Afro Samurai game. They're a small developer, but some of them used to be compiled of Namco Bandai developers. So this is my review. I'm just going to literally read to you what I wrote down. In the words of Shigeru Miyamoto, a delayed game is eventually a good game. A bad game is bad forever. Given that Afro Samurai 2 Revenge of Kuma is being distributed in volumes, there's still some hope that with some more effort and time, Volumes 2 and 3 can provide some sort of an apology for the absolute train wreck that is Volume 1. Afro Samurai is a kick-ass manga and anime created by Takashi Okazaki. The story centers around a child named Afro who witnesses his father's death at the hands of a man named Justice. In the world of Afro Samurai, there are numerous headbands throughout the land, with each with a number on it. The number 1 headband belonged to Afro's father, while the number 2 belonged to a man named Justice. Whoever possesses the number 1 headband can only be challenged by the number 2, while the wearer of the number 2 lives a life of endless battles as they can be challenged by anyone looking to claim the title of number 2. Afro eventually acquires the number 2 headband later on in his life and makes it his number 1 priority to avenge his father's death by challenging Justice, killing him, and securing the spot of the number 1 swordsman in the world, along with the number 1 headband. Afro Samurai 2 Revenge of Kuma is a sequel to the 2009 video game simply titled Afro Samurai. The original title received generally moderate to positive reviews, with most of the criticism landing on the game's repetitive nature and a lack of a more intuitive combat system. So why is Revenge of Kuma an absolute train wreck, as I put it, you may be asking? Well, let me scroll down for a second. Well, for starters, scrolling back up, because I need to go back up there and see. For starters, the story is an absolute mess. The pacing is awful, and although beautiful, the new artwork that has been supplied by creator Takashi Okazaki is awkwardly displayed in place of what it could easily have been in-game cutscenes. The timing of these images and how they are layered over each other is extremely rough. If you are unfamiliar with the voices of these characters, you might also not have any idea of who is actually talking at the moment, but we'll get more into that later when we discuss the game's overall presentation. Revenge of Kuma takes place right after the events of the original game. Kuma, also known as Gino, is essentially Afro's adoptive older brother. Volume 1 deals with Kuma literally piecing himself back together after having made his first attempt at getting revenge on Afro for the murder of their master and their adopted siblings. Confused yet? As a newcomer, you more than likely are not going to have any clue what's going on in the story. Flashbacks to the past and the semi-present happen quite frequently within the first hour of the game. I say semi-present because during the time that we are actually playing Kuma's story in this game, Afro Samurai 2, the last game had actually already moved past all this while we played the role of Afro. In Afro Samurai Resurrection, which is actually the film and a continuation of the story that was delivered within 5 television episodes, that is when Gino gets his second attempt at revenge, and is where I assume this game's story is heading. It's been a long time since I played the first Afro Samurai game and watched the television show, but even still, I remember most of the important details, and yet still, Revenge of Kuma, let me scroll down, can be extremely confusing even to me. For example, why Gino is actually teaming up alongside Brother 3 of the MT7 clan, having almost been killed by him in the beginning of the game, makes no sense to me. perhaps an example of the enemy of my enemy is my friend is the idea, but even still, it makes no sense. Had the game's audio been mixed better and an option for subtitles provided, I may have actually caught on to what was happening. Volume 1 is about 2.5 to 3 hours in length, and a good hour and a half of that will be spent switching back and forth between past and present and watching the few cutscenes there are, with ironically no music or sound at all aside from the dialogue. Well, the camera sways back and forth like it doesn't know what it wants to do with itself. So I'm talking about in-game cutscenes, not the comic book ones that they have. They're in-game cutscenes where literally the camera just pans around a character as they give like a long monologue. Now here's where things get extremely dumbfounding. From what I can understand, Kuma is now attempting to reach Justice's resting place so that he can wait for Afro there, as he knows Afro will eventually come to kill Justice. But what I don't understand is if this game is supposed to take place after the first Afro Samurai game, but technically it's in a timeline that sort of occurs alongside the original game, then why is Kuma trying to get up to the mountain after having already fought Afro and lost? Afro has already killed Justice. In Afro Samurai Resurrection, Kuma, aka Gino, teams up with his, or that should be Gino, aka Kuma, teams up with his actual blood-related sister and not the adopted one that he lost that he was trying to avenge, in order to get his second attempt at revenge on Afro. There is also a nod to this in Revenge of Kuma by way of a comic book-like cutscene featuring Okazaki's artwork again. But again, here's the problem. The game makes a nod of that movie like it already happened, but I thought the whole point of this game's story was to lead into the plot of the film or cover it. This is exactly what I mean by this. The game's story is an absolute mess. There's so many flashbacks. Reverb is overused on all dialogue to give it a trippy flashback sounding tone. And on top of that, there's the music playing at all times, except for these slow, dull, in-game, non-comic book-like cutscenes in which the character gives you that long-winded monologue. Where the story is going, I have like absolutely no clue. All I know is that it makes no sense and this first volume ends abruptly. Gameplay. Let me scroll back up for a second. Gameplay. The original Afro Samurai was a lot of fun, even though there were some dull platforming sections and enemies were recycled constantly. But the dynamic Dismemberment gameplay mechanic that was like one of the coolest features in the games and was sort of like Metal Gear Solid Revengeance with how it was implemented. Yeah, it just was really cool. So in several interviews with members of Redacted Studios, they said they wanted to take fan feedback and apply it to the game, the sequel, to make it less repetitive and more enjoyable. And that sounded awesome to me. But what I didn't expect was for them to literally scrap everything that was awesome about the last game and come up with something that is extremely unpolished and at times not even playable. So what's here? Combat and platforming. There are no crows for you to find, or none of Otsuru's bears for you to find to restore your health like there was in the previous game. And the meat of the game is simply you running through bland, linear environments until you are stopped and must either watch a cutscene or fight a wave of repetitive, completely stupid enemies. While playing Gino in the past, because you flash back so many times, you have practically no moves at all. All you can do is mash square and occasionally try and land a counter Batman style using triangle. It also doesn't help that you can't move the camera. The camera is a lot like that of the original Devil May Cry games, in which it is set to a specific point and cannot be altered by the player. I purposely walked away from the camera one time to see if there were any collectibles and found myself in an ugly situation in which I could easily glitch myself out and then had to restart the checkpoint, which leads me to my next point, and this review can only go up to like 15 minutes, so I'm trying to finish this as fast as I can. The game has a skill tree compiled of lackluster perks for you to select from once you receive skill points for doing whatever it is that you're supposed to do. Unlike trophies, the game never really tells you what you're actually supposed to do to earn these skill points, and if it did, then it clearly wasn't obvious enough to me, the player, what that requirement was. I just eventually assumed it was the same as most games. Achieve a high combo count and just start killing enemies. The perks that you can choose from are also not really explained all that well. Either that, or they're just that insignificant that they can be labeled simply as a boost in speed and a new finisher or more power. But every attack that Kuma deals out when you mash the square button is completely random, and his attacks are so slow that I couldn't even tell the difference in speed, even after I completely leveled up each fighting style, as there are 3 different fighting styles for you to choose from, and to almost its full potential, leveling up all the skills for you, all the skill trees to their full potential. I say almost because you aren't actually able to choose the last perk of each skill tree until the next episode. These skills are new finishing moves, but again, Kuma's finishing moves along with his normal combos are all random, so who knows what move will be new and when you'll see it unless you're like paying super close attention. The combat is just flat out weak in Revenge of Kuma, and to top off all of that, if you die right after selecting the skills you want from the skill tree, everything will reset, and you will have to navigate the clunky menu again to choose the skills you already selected. This also isn't the only easy way to lose the selections you've made to your skill trees. The game features a reset option if you end up deciding that you don't like what you've selected, but rather than let you deselect them individually, you simply press triangle and completely wipes everything. I died once and had to reselect the skills I wanted to upgrade, and then I also accidentally pressed triangle twice and had to start over again twice. There is no confirmation button after pressing triangle, so if you press it, that's it. On a side note, there's also no sound effects whatsoever when navigating the skill tree or selecting skills. Sometimes, when you fight using Afro style, you get a sense of nostalgia and a glimmer of what the new game could feel like. At the game's best, when the frame rate is smooth, the enemies are close enough for you to counter, and the game actually registers your button press, and the music is bumping, and you're switching from style to style, and finishing people off with special moves that look atrocious, given that the animations are still extremely rough, you sometimes get a sense that you're having fun. But then it all goes away when you press triangle only to have the game say you didn't, resulting in your death, causing you to listen to the same tired dialogue over again, while for reasons that I can't even understand, the music continues to play, even through your death and respawn. That's when you remember just how broken this game is, and how much money you paid for it, and how much more fun the demo for the first Afro Samurai game is compared to this whole experience, this whole first experience. By the way, there were QuickTime events that are bogged down by a choppy frame rate, dull looking set pieces, and did I mention that there is absolutely no controller vibration whatsoever, so you can't even tell when you're almost done with a QuickTime event. And that's throughout the whole thing. There's just no controller vibration at all. So presentation, I'm trying to finish this within the next 3 minutes. I've already told you about the horrible frame rate and the terrible cameras and the bland looking environments. I told you a little bit about how the audio is so poorly mixed that half the time you can't understand what's being said during a cutscene because the devs decided to play a non-instrumental version of the new song off the game's soundtrack while you're trying to listen to what's going on top of not having subtitles to read. I've told you all that. I mean, this game's audio is so poorly mixed that you could probably do a better job of mixing it yourself. But unfortunately for you, the only time you can do that is in the main menu where you're actually getting a chance to go to the options screen and select from the different volume options for sound effects, dialogue, and music. Which literally, as I'm typing this review, which I was typing it and I looked up, I didn't even realize that you could actually spell dialogue without the U and the E. So that might have been a typo on them, but I'm not even sure. But I've told you all about that. What I haven't told you is that so far, Yuri Lowenthal as Kuma and Phil Lamar as Brother 3, which I still believe it's Phil Lamar, I have to check the credits again, are the only ones that give any kind of memorable performance. But even still, given that certain scenes play out with any other sound effects or music entirely, even Yuri's performance suffered due to horrible sounding recordings and a major lack of polish overall. What I might do is I might split this review up just a little bit. I might finish this review in the 15 minutes because I'm limited to 15 minutes for reasons. And then after that, I'll probably add the rest of this, so bear with me. Yeah, so did I mention that also the enemy's groans and threats from the first game has been recycled and reused here as well? At first I thought this was kind of cool and like nostalgic and stuff, but then it just made me mad when you realize just how lazily this game is put together. So to recap, the audio is terrible, the environments are bland, and the camera is bad. But what about the music? The music, along with the fact that the game simply has the name Afro Samurai, is literally the only two saving merits of this entire game. And I think I'm just going to end this part of the review right here. I know it's in the middle of it, but trust me, it's the only way that I can do this review, and I really want to put this review. So I'm going to end it here. I'm going to upload another video with the rest of the review. So I'll be right back.